NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is one of the greatest resources of our country. It used to be the pride and joy of this nation, taking us all the way to the moon and back, and many people still believe that it still enjoys that privileged status. I asked several of my friends, out of the entire US national budget every year, what percentage do you think goes to funding NASA? And I received answers in the range of 3 to 10%, when in reality, NASA only receives 0.5% for every tax dollar. Today, I plan on showing you why NASA deserves more funding. First, by showing you the arguments against it. Second, by rebutting those very arguments. And then third, showing you one of the greatest things and assets of NASA. Now, on to the arguments against it, and don't get me wrong, there are some pretty compelling arguments against funding NASA. The first is that we should focus on things here on Earth. Why are we spending so much time looking up when we should be looking down here at our feet and focusing on problems such as poverty, homelessness, war, and global warming? We should not be spending so much money on space travel and NASA when we could be spending that same money here on Earth. The second big problem is that NASA is simply too much money. Last year, NASA's budget was $17.4 billion. And many people think that's too much money to be spending on space when we could be fixing some of those very same problems I just mentioned, like global warming. And the third argument is that the money we do spend on NASA is wasted. Why are we throwing money into space? There are better reasons to use it for. Let's take MIT, for example. Last year, MIT's running budget was $2.5 billion. If you took NASA's same budget from last year, you could fund 7 MITs. Why aren't we doing that? Why are we not funding schools that can help educate the young minds of our generation? It seems illogical when you frame it in that way. And those 3 arguments are some of the biggest 3 arguments against NASA, but while they may seem convincing, I think that the arguments for NASA are much more convincing and far stronger. Now, let's focus on the first argument I brought up, that we should be focusing on things here on Earth rather than in space. Well, NASA does just that. In the first slide in my PowerPoint, this pie chart shows that nearly $1.7 billion from NASA's budget in 2015 went into Earth science. And that directly goes into looking at problems here on Earth, such as rising ocean levels, pollution, and global warming. NASA is one of the biggest organizations here on Earth that helps promote sustaining our planet and keeping it alive. And even so, the argument we shouldn't focus on other frontiers when we need to focus right here doesn't make sense. Imagine if the King of Spain told that to Christopher Columbus and said, "I'm not going to give you the money to go explore the new world when we have to spend that money fixing the problems here on Earth." If that had never happened, we wouldn't have, the Western Hemisphere. The second is that we simply don't have the money. Well, that's ridiculous. The US national budget is $3.7 trillion. It's not that we can't afford it, it's that we've chosen not to afford it. The second graph in my PowerPoint is a line graph, and it shows that NASA has never been more than 4% of our total budget, and that wasn't since 1966. Since the year 1990, we've been less than 1% of our US total budget. It's not that we can't afford it, it's that we choose not to. To put it in another perspective, the bailout that the banks received in 2008 was greater than the past 50 years of NASA's budget. With $3.7 trillion, we can spend it on anything we want. I mean, you can't say we don't have the money when if you take the tax dollar and cut into it into little pieces, take 0.5%, you don't even make it to the ink. We have the money for NASA, we're just choosing not to spend it. And the last argument was that the money we do spend on NASA is wasted. But it's not like there's some mystical space bank that we throw money into. No, the money is spent here, giving jobs, creating services, and stimulating the economy. In 1989, the Chapman Research Foundation found that between the years of 1976 and 1984 alone, nearly $21.6 billion was added to the economy, nearly 352,000 mostly skilled jobs, and they even looked at 259 spin-off products, such as Velcro, that had been inspired by the space program. And they estimate that 259 products were only 1% of the estimated 25 to 30,000 products that have directly come from NASA's space program. I mean, It's ridiculous to assume that the money is wasted when that 1/2 of 1% goes into all the space centers, all the space stations, all the rovers, all the telescopes, all the astronauts. That money is incredibly well used and used extremely efficiently. And finally, I really want to point out what NASA does for our culture. NASA does something that no other government organization does. And now, I don't know about you, but I've never met an 8th grader that says, when I grow up, I want to be a National Institute of Health researcher. It just never happened. And don't get me wrong, they may grow up to be a National Institute of Health researcher, and the science that the NIH does is extremely useful and good. However, the NIH is completely unknown and invisible at the age when people decide what they want to do for the rest of their lives. It is NASA that appeals to people's hopes and dreams and encourages young minds to go into, say, science and technology, engineering, mathematics, physics. Even a few days ago, Bill Nye came to campus, and he was trying to promote a light sail that he would be putting on a future spacecraft, and you should have seen the excitement he brought. Over the time he was here, probably 400 or 500 students came down to see him, and granted, many were excited to see their childhood hero Bill Nye. Many were also interested by the space technology he was using. I mean, the space is this final last frontier that still excites young people even today. And it even has inspired several Cal Poly students. I mean, Victor Glover, a former Cal Poly alum who graduated in 1999, actually joined the 21st astronaut class from NASA in 2013, becoming the 4th Cal Poly student to become an astronaut for NASA. NASA is a complete force of nature, unlike any other. And luckily for you, NASA got very lucky in 2016, and Congress actually approved a budget increase. Earth science will increase by $200 million, and NASA will also have enough money to fund several of their space exploration missions, such as the James Webb Space Telescope. But that does not mean that there are still not people trying to reduce NASA's funding. In 2014, just 2 short years ago, the Republican majority of the House Committee of Science, Space, and Technology tried to reduce NASA's funding by $300 million. There is still a problem, but how can you help? Well, one of the things you can do is reach out to Penny for NASA. They're a local nonprofit that they try to make NASA's budget go from 1/2 of 1 penny all the way up to 1 penny on the tax dollar. And you can visit their website to donate money, to volunteer. They even make it easy to write a letter to the heads of your local congressional district. With your support, we can ensure that NASA has enough funding to do the things that make this country great and inspire people like Victor Glover and inspire young people like you and me to go to school, achieve greatness, and make the dreams of tomorrow the reality of today. Thank you.
Thanks. How long was that?